Is that large enough on your screen? Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All
All right.
right.
Yep.
I think I heard Mike. Mike, are you on the call? Mike Marshy?
Yep.
Well, congratulations. The word yesterday, those that haven't heard, you might share your new assignment with the group if we happen to have folks on the call that haven't gotten the word.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah. Effective May 1st, I'm going to double down on plant manager responsibilities. So in addition to Baytown, I'll have responsibilities for the Orange site, Chem 32.
And there's a lot of synergy there because we just hired Sean Baglio, and he's the health and safety specialist, and he'll be supporting both sites. So I got a win-win situation there. I think that's good. Glad it worked out that way. A lot of work.
Looking forward to the challenge.
Hey, now you can appreciate. Maybe Sean might spend a little more time over there than we first thought. But no, I know you're trying to get your arms around everything that needs to be done over there, Mike. And there's certainly, there's a lot of things to be done, sure. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. There may be some others joining in a little bit later, but I wanted to take the time to just briefly run through this new document, the Eco Services Turnaround HSE Guidance Document. When we started preparing this, we really were looking for a template for the site-specific plan, which some sites I think have, others don't. So after a lot of time and effort, we decided that maybe this should be a guidance document that really kind of sets the requirements for what you do at the site or unit specific level. And we'll talk through that, towards the end of the document. We're not here, I'll say, to debate the content. It's gone through an approval process with all the key stakeholders. But if you do see something that you absolutely know is, inaccurate or something that's obviously missing, or even if you see something you think is not necessary, make note of that and let's talk offline. You can schedule some time with me to talk offline. Hopefully that's not the case. We've gone, it's been a pretty painstaking effort over the last several months to get the document where it is today. So that's kind of the ground rules for the meeting. It's a fairly large document, it's 15 pages long. And really the key here is understanding the purpose of the document. And I'll say probably item C, maybe even probably if we put this in order, might be the one of most importance, is that this document establishes the minimum expectations or requirements for what we expect to see in your site or your unit specific turnaround plan. That's really where the details are, but it does satisfy all three of these requirements. Establishing the minimum requirements for managing HSE, from the turnaround, really from the planning stage all the way through execution to post project review. Can be used for very, very large projects as well. And it does provide the necessary guidance to ensure that the turnaround scope of work is completed without incident in a safe manner, in line with our HSE policies. So those are the three purposes of the document. The next section here is around goals, and obviously every day of the week, regardless if it's a turnaround, our goal is, for everybody to go home the same way they came, and that we keep everything in the pipe. So, we don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want any spills or releases. But in order to do that, obviously some things have to take place. So, we want to stress every single day of the turnaround that we need to be proactive. You need to be constantly collaborating. A lot of people on site, a lot of project, a lot of work's going on. Diligent in following procedures, open communication with one another, obviously looking out for one another, stopping unsafe work, and really having a stop, think, and act mindset. So the overall goal and the target is obviously we don't want we want zero perfect day events for a turnaround. And we've done a pretty good job over the last several years of meeting that goal. And I know turnarounds, there's a lot of work going on. There's certainly the risks are increased, and the opportunity for injury or the opportunity for release or a spill is greater. But there's also greater focus on that work, in preparation all the way through the turnaround. But that's always going to be our goal. We don't want any perfect day events. So any questions at all about the purpose or the goals so far? Okay, let's move right along. So one thing we did is looked at roles and responsibilities, and obviously there's a lot of people involved in planning and executing a turnaround, and I grouped some of these together. And the primary aspects, or I guess, of these responsibilities were associated with, managing the health safety aspect of the turnaround. And so there may be a few of these that you may think, well, what do they have to do with health or safety? So if I miss some, that's fine. I'm not too worried about that. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. There are some, responsibilities that are overlapping. But we just want, everyone to have an understanding of what the expectations are with regard to, roles and responsibilities for these various functions. And I got quite a bit of feedback on these. One area of feedback came around this turnaround director. I think there was some confusion whether or not that position or function was still in existence. And Paul has assured me that it is, and so that role, all of our turnarounds this year should have an assigned turnaround director. Obviously, that person wears that hat, but they wear the hat of their regular job, whatever it might be, maintenance manager or whatever their primary role is. But this is a a role for the turnaround. Obviously, the HSE group plays a big role in the success of the turnaround, and there's the responsibilities, for those both health, safety, and the environmental group. And so, obviously, we're a major resource, planning, engineering department, etc. So I've done my best to try to pull from, information that I already had and gathering feedback from those numerous people who responded to this aspect to ensure that I captured, at least the primary responsibilities for the key roles in planning and executing the turnaround. You're going to see a lot of references to the site unit specific turnaround plan. And let me, before we go any further, you're probably thinking, well, as we go through this, this is not anything new. I mean, you're telling us something we already know, and for the most part, that's true. But when I went looking for a document, when I asked around and I asked, well, can you show me your site-specific turnaround plan? Well, there was nothing. I mean, well, here's how we do a turnaround. Here's how we do meetings. Here's how we do audits. That's just how we do things. But there was not any kind of a guiding document that that I could put my finger on. I found one that was pretty close at one of our sites that said, this is how we manage safety in a turnaround. So that was the purpose of this document, and then focusing on the unit specific or site specific turnaround plan. And before you get too nervous, if you haven't read through this, that doesn't necessarily, this site turnaround plan does not have to be a single document. In most cases, it's not going to be. It's a combination of a variety of documents. It's really more of the elements that you need to have in place, and we'll so this document here references all the things that you need to have in that particular document. Obviously, during a turnaround, there are some major hazards and some focus areas. We just wanted to point that out here in the document. Nothing new there, obviously. We want to pay close attention to all of these. So in your site plan, you need to have some reference to how you're managing these. And most of these are going to relate right back to a procedure or a process that you already have at the site. So when we think of the, the turnaround plan, obviously it needs to focus on, hazard recognition and prevention for these major hazards. So the key procedures, processes, we're still in a pandemic, so, we need to be, abiding by our pandemic plan, which, we've gone away from requiring the N95 to, a N95 or a surgical mask, which is a good thing, but it still requires that mask. It's still going to require other things, social distancing when we can, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all the key procedures that obviously play a key role in success, safely executing the turnaround. Obviously, contractors and subcontractors, we know in here that we have a process for pre-qualifications of both contractors and subcontractors. And if we have any specialized contractors who are not meeting those requirements, and then we need to make sure that we have a variance in place. Hopefully that's not the case, but I know from time to time that does happen for one reason or another. So if I have any contractors that are working, or even subcontractors, as far as that's concerned, that do not meet our pre-qualification requirement, if they're not green in a VETA, then especially if they're red, then we're going to have to ensure that we have a variance in place. And that's something that we'll be checking. Obviously, contractors, there's safety training and orientations that's required. Obviously, all of our contractors at all of our sites, have to go through the site-specific training or whatever other training that's required. But there's also, an orientation that's necessary specific to the turnaround. And every contractor employee should go through that orientation, that turnaround safety orientation, whether that's given by one of our employees or we pass along the information to the contractor, who in turn provides that orientation to their employee. Obviously, TWIC cards required for those sites that require TWIC cards. One thing here is every contractor needs a point of contact. We need to know, who, and that goes both ways. The point of contact for each contractor and their eco-services representative shall be identified, and that's one of the requirements in the site-specific plan. A new requirement that you see here, which we're not going to enforce this set of turnarounds or this year, unless we think it's absolutely necessary, but going into 2022, any turnarounds or any large projects that have a crew size of 25 people or greater on any given shift will require a dedicated safety person or rep. And that person cannot have any other responsibilities other than safety. So that is new. I know some of our contractors may be doing that already. You might say, well, how did we come up with 25? Well, we debated a lot of numbers from anywhere from 20 all the way up to 50, and we landed on 25. And that person, needs to have 3 years of documented relevant safety experience. It just can't be, they can't take any, whoever from their organization and just say you're the safety guy. They have to have had, worked in that function for at least 3 years. It also states that there may be some jobs that we would require that have a crew size less than 25 to have a dedicated safety person, depending upon the complexity or the hazards or the risk associated with that job. And that would be obviously up to the turnaround director or the management team on site working with the health and safety specialist to make that determination. If you have some sites may have done this in the past, have some type of positive recognition. Before I go any further, any comments on what we just talked about or questions on contractors and subcontractors? Okay. Positive recognition program, whether it's formal or informal, I kind of encourage it, but it's not required. And I know we have for our own employees, especially our employees, a recognition program. I don't know if we have any sites that has anything specific to a turnaround. But if you do, it needs to be included in your turnaround plan. It needs to be communicating clear to everyone if you have some type of recognition program in place. Do we have any sites that have something in place specific for turnaround or have had in the past? Anyone?
Yeah, well, Larry, this is Steve from Dominguez. We had for quite some time a very informal plan. We would do something simple like go buy a bunch of $5 gift cards from local fast food places, McDonald's, Burger King, that kind of thing. And then each of the management folks, supervisors, engineers was given a handful of those. And the idea was that when we saw somebody and it included our people too, if we saw somebody doing something good related to HSE, we gave them a card and said thank you. And that was well received. We've kind of steered back away from that once PQ said they didn't like us handing out anything that had cash value. So it kind of fell off the plate after that. But up till then, we've done it pretty routinely.
Cool. I encourage the sites to, do something within the parameters of what we can do. I mean, we can't do things that we used to be able to do with respect to gift cards and things of that nature. But, there are ways to recognize people informally. So I just, if you do that, just make sure that that's, everyone's aware of what the plan is. Obviously, the next topic is real key, and that's meetings and communications. And again, this is nothing new, but I don't know where I would have found this documented for the most part until this, at least from a network perspective, until we put this document together. We know that we need a pre-turnaround leadership team meeting, bringing in, or now virtually if necessary, contractor management from our key contractors, to reinforce what our expectations are around safety for the turnaround. And I know that I'm pretty well certain that each site has been doing that, and that obviously should be done, fairly in advance of the turnaround. Not so far that, they forget what we talked about, but certainly in advance of the turnaround. Obviously the safety orientation, which we already mentioned, which I've heard, sometimes referred to as this expectations meeting. And that's the meeting that occurs prior to contractors going to work on site. So we shouldn't have anybody out there working that hasn't gone through the expectations or safety orientation. Do we in any way, how do we, I know there's probably sign-in sheets, but do we use any other method like hard hat stickers or any other way to determine whether someone's had that orientation at any of our sites?
Hard hat stickers. This is Wyatt from Martinez.
Oh, you use stickers for that, for your turnaround?
Yeah.
Hard hat stickers? Okay, so it should just basically got a turnaround 2021 or something like that, so you know that they've gone through the orientation?
Yes.
Okay,
Houston's
cool.
doing the same thing, Larry.
Yeah, I think that's, certainly contractors like stickers, so, and it's just one way you can recognize, who's gone through the training. Daily meetings, obviously, and sometimes it's more than one. But when you have your daily meeting, obviously, HSE performance for that day or any issues or concerns needs to be brought up. I think it should be the first item on the agenda. Is that generally the case? Is it generally safety the first topic in whatever you have?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I would hope so. That we try to make a habit of putting safety first, even in our meetings. Toolbox meetings, so those should be on each and every shift for each and every crew. So it shouldn't be a contractor on site working that hasn't had a toolbox meeting that morning or that evening, whenever the shift started. Sometimes we have to have stand down meetings. If something serious happens, we have to call timeout. And that's strictly up to, the site as to when that happens. And can anybody recall where you've actually stood down and stopped all the work and brought everybody together and talked about something that may have happened? Anybody think of something in recent year?
Here.
Yeah, we did that with the Knox event last year at Unit 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have stand down meetings for those reasons, but you need, certainly they're critical. Then, and then last but not least here is the post turnaround HSE critique meeting, and I know you have a post turnaround critique meeting looking at all aspects of the turnaround, but our goal there is to within 1 month of the turnaround have a critique, just critiquing the HSE aspects of the turnaround. We don't want to wait 3 months, 6 months down the road to have an HSE critique. It's something we want to do, sooner than later. So we can get learnings out to other, sites as quickly as possible. And I know we got some turnarounds that are pushing back to back this year, but anyway, the target is 1 month. Life-saving behaviors, I think it's a given that we need to stress those with our contractors and our employees as well. Stop work is another thing that we really, really need to be stressing throughout the turnaround. Certainly, there's a great deal of emphasis on our life-critical procedures and our safety rules. And some sites, I think, have a documented process or procedure for how they're managing the violations, 1, 2, 3, you're out, or something of that nature. If you have that, just make sure it's absolutely clear. I mean, we know violation, of any of our, life, saving behaviors and any of our life critical procedures, especially if it's willful, is a very, very serious violation, probably will wind up in termination. But anyway, do any of our sites have something in writing around safety rule violations during the turnaround?
Yes, we do. Baton Rouge does.
Okay. And that's communicated as a part of your orientation, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All righty. Just want, if you have something specific to turnaround. Now, Randy, is that specific for turnarounds or would that apply each and every day of the week?
Specific to contractors each and every day of the week, whereas generally it just applies, like life-saving behavior rules applies to site employees,
Okay.
primarily for larger capital projects for a lot of contractors on site or a turnaround.
Gotcha. Obviously, incident management is important during a turnaround, and might we do some things different potentially during a turnaround? So if that's the case, that needs to be covered in your site-specific turnaround plan. Who needs to be notified, when they need to be notified. Just how the overall incident management process. I mean, you got a number of contracting firms there. You just need to make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do in case of an incident. And not only in case of the incident, post-incident, with respect to, number one, primarily, taking care of the individual if they're hurt, but secondarily, fully investigating the incident to understand, the root cause and causal factors and ways we can prevent reoccurrence. Emergency response, certainly with the number of people that are in the plant, it's, it could be upwards of 2 or 3 times as many as you normally would have in your plant. You need to make sure that everybody's, understands the emergency response plan. And if you're doing anything different during the turnaround, which you may not, then, regular workday, that needs to be included in your site-specific turnaround plan. Audits, inspections, observations, and safety walks. Call them what you may, and some of these are obviously maybe different, but each site is required, and I know each site does have a process to do these. So you need to understand, who, what, when, where, and how, who's doing them, when are they doing them, and what the expectations, and then how that's communicated back to, through your daily meetings or whatever means you have of communicating, the results of these audits or inspections or anything you need to do different as a result of those. A couple of things around occupational health is heat stress, and I mentioned fatigue. Now, we don't have a fatigue policy per se. Each of our sites do have a heat stress procedure. The Gulf Coast just, has one that maybe a little more stringent than some of the other sites, effective, immediately. But, heat stress is certainly in the summer months at all of our sites, can be a potential concern. So you need to make sure that you're managing heat stress and fatigue. Not having a fatigue policy, it's something that, we still have to manage. And a lot of times it has to be on an individual basis, just like heat stress. Someone thinks they're getting overheated. Someone thinks they're fatigued. Then I'm not suggesting they raise their hand fatigued and I'm going home, but certainly, as you have to take into consideration, especially turnarounds that are upwards of 2 or even 3 weeks. I mean, people get fatigued. So the statement that I'm saying here is consideration should be given to bringing in, supplemental external resources if we can. Contract safety people or engineers from one plant to another, safety professionals from one plant to another. I mean, just, to help out. So you can give people a break from time to time, so they're not dragging to the point where they're, not thinking clearly. So is there any ways that you guys are currently formally or informally managing fatigue during these turnarounds? Or have you seen it and it be a concern or an issue? Anyone? Nothing formal.
No, we,
Okay.
Wyatt, nothing formal, but we do give consideration for the startup. We want folks to have fresh minds, so we have people take breaks, generally a few days before the startup.
But it's not like you can only work so many days in a row before you need a day off or anything of that nature.
No, nothing like that.
Okay, yeah. Some sites I've worked where there was a maximum for every 14 days you work, you had to have at least 1 day off, something of that nature. But anyway,
we would need
sounds
more,
like,
Larry.
excuse me, sorry.
I said we would need more people for that. I mean, we try to even get people to come to the turnarounds to help out, and we struggle with that because some of the turnarounds are right on top of each other and we can't borrow and, from
Yeah,
other.
I understand that, Mike. Yep, I fully understand it. So obviously we know that, as we progress beyond 2 weeks, people are, fatigue is starting to set in. It's just, and certainly when that occurs, then certainly the risk for, an incident or a mistake increases. So we just have to be as much conscientious about that as we can. Obviously, our safe work procedures are critical. I just mentioned a few things here. All of our life critical procedures. Falling dropped objects prevention probably during a turnaround is of most importance versus maybe regular work. So much elevated work, a lot of cranes from time to time. So even though we didn't issue the dropped falling objects prevention procedure, we did go ahead and issue the dropped objects inspection or audit form that I would, so we have an expectation that several times throughout the turnaround that when you do your inspections, have a focus on dropped objects prevention and utilize that form. And one of the reasons we put that on hold is we're going to integrate this into our safe work process. Obviously, permitting and all these other things are I'm breezing through these, but air like when we say air monitors, I'm really thinking of monitoring instruments here for confined space work or hot work, or maybe that could be worded a little bit better. Of course, there's a lot more monitoring going on during a turnaround there would be in any other given time. Do you guys bring in extra gas monitors, 3 or 4 gas instruments for turnarounds, or do you have plenty that you just have there in the plant? How do you manage that?
We bring in a lot of extra standard 4 gas meters, and we bring in also hydrogen meters.
Right, and you have a checkout, the procedure process for those? Where they,
Yes,
just-
they're located in the, in our turnaround trailer. We have an attendant that checks them out, checks them back in.
Contractor that manages it.
It's a contractor that comes in that manages it and calibrates them, of course.
right, so it sounds like each site probably does something similar, so, I'm just saying that in your turnaround plan, you need to have, people need to know where to go, where to get them, and how to get them. Certainly, if you run into any asbestos or lead, which we do have sites that still have asbestos and maybe some lead, we just need to make sure that contractors are aware of where that might be and how we mark, stencil, and label that. And if there's any work that they're going to be doing that would disturb lead or asbestos, how to go about doing that. So that's something that we need to be communicating to our folks. Housekeeping certainly during a turnaround is it's a great importance. I mean, there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of opportunity for good housekeeping. There's also a lot of opportunity for poor housekeeping. So a great deal of emphasis should be placed on, and I know is placed on housekeeping. Obviously, when we think of environmental aspects, during a turnaround, anytime you're shutting down, obviously, starting up a plant, there's, an opportunity for, an exceedance or some type of environmental event. There's obviously more waste generated during a turnaround, can be, of all types. So obviously, we have to have, a great deal of emphasis on how we're managing the environmental aspects of the turnaround to ensure that we don't have, any leaks or any spills, especially anything greater than a level 0. And you may be doing some things different during a turnaround, than you would be, especially when it comes to maybe waste management, because maybe you're generating more waste. So just ensure that that in your site plan that anything that's spelled out, especially things that might be different or unusual than just regular waste management from day to day, that people understand what those requirements are. Weather related events, obviously we need to manage those, whether it be thunderstorms or lightning, whatever it might be. I think most of the sites have a lightning safety action plan as to what to do and when to do it. Just again, make sure that everyone on site is aware of how you're managing severe weather events and what they would need to do. That's probably going to be covered in your safety orientation. Obviously, food preparation and consumption and hygiene is important, even more so in a pandemic situation like we're in. But obviously, you need to have, and I know you do, designated areas for eating and drinking. Lunch areas, your portable toilets, your hand washing stations. So just in your site plan, it should indicate whether you get this specific or not. I'm not suggesting you have to have a plot plan showing where toilets are located, but people need to know where they are. You need to make sure there's adequate numbers of those, as well as hand washing stations. If you have a facility that has multiple units and you're only shutting one unit down, you have other units in operation, then it's specifically important to understand where you can and can't place portable buildings, trailers, tents, temporary shelters, and those kinds of things. So, I would suggest that, you consult Wendy or George whenever there's the opportunity for that to take place. For those sites that have had, and I think all of our sites have had, well, no, not all of them, but several of our sites have had facility siting studies. Not all of them are final, but let's see, sites access and security. Obviously, you have means in place for that. It's whether things are different during the turnaround, they could very well be. Obviously, there's a lot of people coming in and out during a turnaround. So we have to obviously manage that and manage vehicle traffic. There's certainly more opportunities for vehicle-related incidents during a turnaround, because a lot of turnarounds on site. I'm assuming that everybody is doing their best to manage to having only those essential vehicles in in the battery limits of the plant during a turnaround? I think everybody's probably doing that. I don't know how you go about doing that, but there needs to be obviously a process in place. Let's see. So I say all that to get to the last statement here around the contents and everything that is listed here from A to Z is in some form or fashion mentioned in the above. So, this sort of sets the expectation for what you need to have for a turnaround safety plan. And let me reemphasize that it's not necessarily a single document. I mean, if you have a single document that addresses all these things, great. We want, to ensure that the expectations are very, very clear for those who need to know regarding all of these things listed below. The goals, where do I go to get a contact list? Which contractor is doing what? Who's my installation guy? Who's my crane guy? Who's this? The plot plan, and there might be some things that you're identifying on the plot plan. If you have a recognition program, when are you going to have your daily meetings? Where are they going to be? Who's expected to be there? And so on and so forth. So you can see that all of these are just basically things that we need to cover in the site plan. And I would bet that in some form or fashion, all of these are already being done at your site. You probably have a contact list. You probably have this. Not sure how you're using the plot plan. I know you have goals. I know you focus on, the life-saving behaviors and stop work authority, both in training as well as in practice, et cetera, et cetera. So any questions about anything we've talked about or what the expectations are for the site or unit specific turnaround plan? Any questions at all? Are you seeing anything you think's unreasonable or unnecessary? Or we just omitted something that we haven't covered that you would expect to see in your site specific plan?
Hey Larry, this is Sean.
Yeah.
You made a comment a minute ago about in the event we come across lead and asbestos, and
Yeah.
my thought process was if we're doing proper planning, we should know well in advance if contractors are going to be involved in any areas that have ACM or any PACM or lead. So we should have all those things marked, identified, and possibly abated well in advance, unless the work requires during the TA to like remove asbestos containing insulation or gaskets and things of that nature, in which we should obviously have a abatement process in place for that during the turnaround. Am I missing something there?
No, I think I think all the sites pretty well know where we have asbestos and lead. If there's any site that doesn't, speak up, and how we go about marking or labeling that so that we know. Yeah, and I agree, if we're going to have any work where we know that people might, working in and around or might in some way disturb either one of these, that has to be, worked into the pre-planning aspect. It is just said, whoop, I came across, is this asbestos? And I'm not suggesting that can't happen, but it all goes back to really, I agree, the planning. And we haven't abated all of these at all of our sites, at least not to my knowledge. I know we still have some around. I know we've had some asbestos projects, since I've been with the company, less than 2 years.
There's
Anybody
plenty
have any-
that's left. There's
that?
plenty of asbestos left in Baton Rouge for sure. It's marked and people are informed of how it's marked and that is tracked, but lead paint is not tracked or listed. Typically when they know they're doing piping projects, they'll do sampling ahead of time.
Right.
But there's no
Okay.
formal list of what is lead and what is not.
And as far as gaskets go, we have ran into one or two in Houston in the last several months where it's not known until identified during discovery of breaking apart flanges or whatnot. So contractors are trained and understand when they run across those.
Right, when they see something that might be asbestos containing material. Right, I
Yes.
mean, hopefully they have, they have somewhat of an understanding what it might, and be overly cautious. You know what I mean? It may not be asbestos, but if it looks like it, smells like it, feels like it, then it might very well be. So, but good point, Sean. Anybody else have any questions or comments at all about anything that you've seen here? Is there anything that you see in the site plan? Again, it's not necessarily a single document. Anything here that you're saying that's new, that you're not already doing?
The one, this is Mark Maget, the one over my years of doing turnarounds at multiple sites, the pre-meeting with contractor management. I've done away with those over the last 15, 20 years because I found them to be rather useless. I think the expectation meeting with the supervisor and employees adds much value. What we found was that the people that they sent for those pre-meetings were not communicating any information back to the people that were actually in the field. So.
Teams meeting. Hold on, I'll look it up. This is boring.
Yeah, and this is Mike. I would just echo Mark's comments and clarify that essentially what Mark does is he combines the two meetings into one and he catches everybody.
And does anyone else have an issue or concern about that? I mean, agree or disagree? I mean,
Well, this was Randy at Baton Rouge, and I have Rawson here with me. And so historically, we will have these supervisors meetings so we can lay everything out and provide paperwork to the supervisors, and then do a secondary follow-up meeting, typically on the very first day shift and the first night shift with all of the employees to make sure they hear it as well and that it is communicated. But it's seemed to be more efficient to capture at least all of the supervisors at that one expectations meeting and give them the long rundown.
I see it as being redundant. You're given the same information. I would not put that as a shall. Some people may find it valuable, but over the years I've done it, I found that meeting not to be as effective as having everybody in the room and hearing the same message at one time.
well, let me ask the group here, and Mark, I guess I'll ask you, the group. So if you're combining 1 and 2, would you not be meeting the requirements of both 1 and 2, or A and B?
Well, you have it down as a pre-turnaround leadership meeting with the management. I don't want you guys dinging me for combining the two.
Well,
so I mean,
I'm not dinging you. I'm just we've got others on the call here.
But if somebody reads that and says, "Mark, did you hold a pre-turnaround leadership meeting?" Because it says you shall.
Larry, this is Jeff. I was just wondering, as we go through this, I per your comment in the beginning, I've kept quiet because I thought maybe we talk offline. But I just want to make sure you kind of mentioned that you had not really found a lot of documentation on turnaround on the planning and stuff. And I had sent you a link on our Equinet. There's actually quite a bit of it. I mean, there should be a lot of planning meetings well in advance of the turnaround. I mean, we have a pre-turnaround meeting, we have post-turnaround meetings, we have meetings leading up to turnaround, we have a whole planning process, dates that are established when we're supposed to do, the different capital projects and reviews. I guess what I'm saying is I can kind of see Mark's intent, I think, in some degree in that process. There is already set up to have management review well prior to the actual turnaround. I mean, there's kind of been a fairly established process.
Well, let me ask this, Jeff. Is the HSE expectations reinforced during that meeting? Is that a topic of discussion? Because the only thing we're concerned about here is that, and it doesn't matter to me whether you have a specific meeting with leaderships to talk about HSE, or it's a significant topic of another meeting where you have all the contractor supervisors in the meeting. If it's already being done, if it's already being done in another format where other topics are addressed, I don't see a problem with it. Now, my preference is a dedicated meeting, but I don't necessarily think it's required.
Well, and it might be better for me to let like the people that are actually running the turnaround, such as Mark, and then people comment. But my experience and my thinking is, yes, is HSE addressed at these at respective meetings, and prior to any contractor coming on site, they have to go through a kind of a onboarding or training of our HSE procedures. But I don't run those turnarounds, so I mean that's not fair for me to make the statement without letting the people that actually do run them to say, yeah, we are covering these specs. So I guess Mark, I kind of defer to you. I mean, I think that they're going on, but do you feel that, Mark Paget? Do you feel that your turnaround meetings that you have a good discussion with the respective contractors and their leader, their supervisors, that we pretty well lay out what's important on safety expectations?
No, we do.
And anyone else on the call that, I apologize, I'm on my cell phone, so it's kind of hard to see everybody on the call, but if there's any other turnaround directors, I think where I have been, yes, this is covered. I mean, it's an important aspect. I mean, we definitely focus on safety, but does anyone disagree with that statement, I guess?
I guess that means no, or maybe they're taking themselves off mute.
Yeah, we're kind of discussing it over here internally, and more or less is we like to have the expectations meeting with the supervisors ahead of time, because all the contractors don't show up on the same day. So this would lead us to having to conduct what typically is a 2 to 3 hour meeting on several occasions throughout the duration of the turnaround. We like to get everybody there, all the supervisors ahead of time, so we can deliver the message to them. So if there is an issue, we can then go to the supervisors and hold them accountable and say, we delivered you the message. Have you not delivered the message clearly, or is there questions? And so they can act accordingly with their employees.
So how do you handle B then? Do you not do the turnaround safety orientation or expectation meeting with all the employees? You just do it, offer it up that one day, and then that's it for all those stragglers?
That's correct. That's why we have all their supervisors come in pre-turnaround to address the straggle issue.
Oh,
Even if they're not starting on Monday, we bring them in. Here's the expectations. We lay out the expectations with them, and
okay.
Opportunity
Yeah, that's where we differ. We do the stragglers when we know somebody's showing up on a Wednesday or a Friday. We ensure that we take the time to meet with them, give them all people that come through this gate gets the same face to face, no matter when they arrive.
Yep, that appears to be the difference.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this, Randy. We got 10 minutes left on the call here. Let me ask this. So are you expecting that the contractor provide that same information that you've provided to those contractor employees on the first day, to those stragglers? How do they get that information? How are they supposed to get it?
There are no stragglers. Okay, so every contractor that is going to perform work at the Unit 2 turnaround in July, every supervisor from each representative contractor is going to participate in the supervisor expectations meeting, where we deliver all this information, and they get all the paperwork, all the materials, and as hopefully responsible supervisors, they deliver the material and disseminate the information to their employees, just like we do to our people below us. And we have the audits in place, and we have daily safety meetings where all those supervisors attend, where if they have any questions for things that they're seeing, it's an open forum for them to ask and us to address the question.
But are you getting the field supervisors, or are you getting superintendents, higher up levels at that first meeting? Usually they don't hire some supervisors are coming in the day or two before the turnarounds.
We have them come in ahead of time. I've spoke with the planners here and we've paid them extra on occasion to send some of those people in, not the field guys, as in the general laborers, but they send in their primary field supervisors. Thorpe comes in, CMW, which is equivalent to LCCC. VIP comes in, Qualo, the people that do the back services over here. Apache, they all.
Let me ask this question, Randy. So what if you have it's a 3-week long turnaround, but you have a contracting company that's only going to be working in the middle of that turnaround, like, 5 days, a specific job that they're going to do, right dead smack. You bring those guys in ahead of the turnaround too?
Yes.
Okay.
The meeting addresses everyone up front, regardless of when they start. If it's planned work to come in and they're on the schedule to come in, and our planners do a good job of it, they're there for the meeting. And now that we all have discovered the wonderful world of Teams, if they can't come in person, we might be able to save some money and have them do it through Teams.
Hey, I'd like to add something to that, Randy. For the 10 years I've been over here, what we have historically done in the projects group, and it was just done by Ellen for D&H coming to do that demo, is we bring them in and we sit them down and we go through the contractor's expectations meeting with all those guys. And that might mean we have to have 2 sessions depending on how many people. Doesn't usually work out that way. But what I then do is I have each one of those individuals sign that list or sign that contractor's expectations. And then I follow up with the contractor during the course of the job, whether it's a turnaround or a lengthy job like we did on Tank 23. If they have anybody coming in and out or new people, we sit them down and go through those and read it to them and then have them sign them. So that's above and beyond that I'm not sure you're aware of, but that's what I do for the jobs we have.
Yeah, no, that was a good elaboration. I'm glad you put that in. And Ross also wanted to point out that I maybe wasn't clear. We also do a pre-meeting similarly also for all of our fire watches and hole watches to get them trained up. So when they come on site, they're also equally prepared. We typically do that after that meeting. Those folks will hang behind and get that knocked out.
Well, I guess the question I have, is there any site that doesn't feel like that they're meeting with the requirements that's spelled out here for A and B? I guess the question some may be asking about Baton Rouge, is all contract personnel are required to sit through this turnaround safety orientation. I mean, you require that, but how you're expecting the contracting company to provide that to those employees if they happen to not be employees that are showing up on the first day, right?
Yeah, that's why I said we go back through it and we get everybody to go through it and sign it. And if they have a straggler or somebody that leaves and then have to fill that position in, we go through it with them also. And they have to sign it. And then you could bounce that off of their list of employees to make sure you got them all.
Good. Okay. That helps. Yeah. Okay. So we got Baytown kind of combining A and B, but I also heard us say that well in advance of the turnaround, we have meetings with contractor management supervision where safety is a topic, and we discuss our expectations during that meeting. So are we good with what Mark and these guys are doing and Mike over there at Baytown, or are we expecting something different based on what we have here in writing in black and white?
This is Wyatt. Not trying to be silenced, but we do A and B separately. But I do get the point the Baton Rouge making. So if it's based on experience, if they have good experience combining the meetings or doing it differently, as long as the words is getting down to the troops, what we expect, I think is fine.
Yeah, this is Mike again. I think by combining, we're still meeting the intent. But one thing we know that you guys don't know is we actually eat lunch together every day of the turnaround with all the contractor lead people. So we have a very strong relationship with their lead people, and we're constantly calibrating on HSE expectations. And if there's not good group participation in there, Mark is quick to threaten by canceling lunch and or dessert for the next day. So.
Yeah, that's a really good, I mean, yeah, that having lunch is, you know, informally a way for things to, you know, I'm sure there's quite a bit of conversation in there. So I'm comfortable saying that what I'm hearing, that we're all meeting in one way or another, what our expectations are for this leadership meeting and the orientation. I know daily meetings are taking place in Toolbox and stand down meetings. And what do you, last question I have before we wrap up, before I wrap up, and then I'll ask if there are any other questions. How do you feel about the requirement for post turnaround HSE critique within 1 month of the turnaround? And do you think, do we need a template or something for that to give you guidance there? Or you feel pretty comfortable that in doing that?
I guess, Larry, I just asked, and on the timing, I think it is good to have a post-turnaround critique, no doubt about it. I just asked if maybe we tie that with this. We already have a post-turnaround meeting that's required, and I don't have it open right in front of me, but I thought it's within 3 months. And I just questioned, can we have those two together? It just makes sense that, you know, usually at those post-turnaround meetings, they do discuss HSE performance already. It's somewhat of a critique. But again, I'll defer to the plants to add their comments, but it just seems like rather than create something different, we already have that process out there.
But let me, before the plant answers, typically from the, you know, from the end of the turnaround to the critique meeting, what's the general, how much time passes on average? Guys in the field.
Probably longer than a month.
We're also saying
longer
typically
than
3
six,
months.
longer than 3 months?
That's the expectation.
We're also saying that the expectation for turnaround critique is 3 months.
But it's
But
quite
it
often
could
a bit longer.
Larry, this is Mike. I think it all comes down to who the target audience is. You know, if you want all the health and safety reps to be part of the critique, then we probably shouldn't mix and match the meetings. You know, if the target audience is pretty narrow, like Jeff and yourself, then maybe we can combine them.
All right, this is probably
agree
the
with
thing we
Mike.
need to speak offline about. Yeah, so let me table that right there. And we'll make a decision whether we think we want to wait 3 months. I guess the question is, are we holding ourselves accountable to that 3 month? I don't know. You know, I've heard people say it as hearsay that, you know, we've gone 4 or 5 months or longer without having a critique meeting. And I don't
Yeah,
know if that's
No, that's accurate for whatever reason, but I agree with Mike's comments. We really got to look at the target audience, because you can spend a lot of time talking HSE critique, and then you can also spend a lot of time critiquing the technical side of a turnaround. And so 2 meetings is an equivalent amount of time, or you split them up.
But I think it's a different audience. You know, that's probably not the same group of people.
Well,
I don't know. We can talk about, we can look at it. You know, I just was thinking that, you know, if we're waiting 3, 4, or 5 months, then, you know, I'd like to get learnings, some way of getting learnings before that. And I'm assuming that's what our critique is about, how well we managed it, opportunities for improvement, right?
and yes, I mean, and the technical issues that we have and moving forward, you know, on our pieces of equipment.
Okay. I will make note of that, and we'll discuss that further. Is there anything else? Because we're out of time, and I don't want to keep you past 12 noon Central. Anything else here that worthy of further clarification or discussion? Okay, I guess not. All righty. The document is on the SharePoint. I will get, we'll get an answer on whether that's 1 month or whether that's just going to be incorporated into, like it already is now, into your post turnaround critique meeting. And we'll make that change if that change is made. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody that had input in the document, because I know I got a lot of feedback. So thanks again and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.